It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
This here's a story about Billy Joe and Bobby Sue. Two young lovers with nothing better to do than sit around the house, get high and watch a tube. And here's what happened when they decided to cut loose. They headed down to old El Paso. That's where they ran into a great big hassle. Billy Joe shot a man while robbing his castle. Bobby Sue took the money and run. Go on, take 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 the money and run. Billy Mack is a detective down in Texas. He knows just exactly what the facts is. He ain't gonna let those two escape justice. He makes his living off of the people's taxes. Bobby Sue, whoa, she slipped away. Billy Joe caught up to her the very next day. They got the money, hey, you know they got away. They headed down south and they're still running today, saying, go on, take the money and run. Go on, take the money and run. Go on, take the money and run. Oh, no. Go on, take the money and run.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Edward Opperman. Edward. You could find me at Opperman, Edward Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, check out our Patreon. A lot of great stuff. I got that Jack Smith unsealed motion there where he lays out the whole case against Donald Trump. I did a whole show about this a couple weeks back, and he's got a big hurdle there to cross because he's saying that the Supreme Court ruled that Trump is allowed to commit any crimes that he wants. Okay, as long as he was president, he could do whatever he wants. And so Jack Smith came back and he says, well, these are all the crimes that were committed as a candidate, not as president. So that's a huge hurdle to jump through. We'll see what happens. But I have it there for you to read. 167 pages. There's all kind of great exhibits in there, too. I got the P. Diddy indictment. I got the Jonathan Odie YouTube video where he went and shot up the Doral Golf Club there and confesses to all this stuff with P. Diddy. 2018, the case is still open. He's on video shooting cops, but somehow the case is still open. Makes you wonder if this guy is a cooperating witness. Franklin cover-up, 700 pages of documents. A lot of great free stuff. That's all free. That's all free. Plus, there's about 1,400, close to 1,500 hours of interviews and tapes and solo shows and all kind of content there from yours truly, Edward Opperman. I'm going to change my name to Edward. Edward. From now on. Forget this Ed business. You guys been too familiar with Ed. Now it's Mr. Opperman. Mr. Edward Opperman, which there's a new regime here starting today. What is this? October 11, 2024. Milton has changed me. Okay. Do a live show every Friday night at Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com. You go there, sign up for free. It's a chat room. I do a live show every Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. However, starting January 1st, that goes away. I don't know how I'm going to do the live show. I still got to figure it out. someone out there too wants to help out with the merch. Let me know if you want to. I got to set up some merch for the Christmas season, and if we don't get some serious subscribers to Patreon, $3 a month, we're going to see the death of this show. We're not going to make it to 12 years, that's for sure. Well, let's see how we do this Christmas season. So far, it's not looking good though. Could be the end. The end. This is the end. My only friend. I'll play that now. So that's Spreaker.com, a chat room, email notification, blah, 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 blah. Quick update on Hurricane Milton. Okay, a lot of people have been contacting me during the week. It is so stressful to be waiting for a hurricane to come, and you're looking, hey, what's it going to be? Category 4, Category 5, what's the landfall? What's it going to hit? What is the storm surge going to be? At one point, they were saying that it was going to be 20 feet high, which, of course, was a ridiculous exaggeration. But still, you're sitting here and you're watching all this, and it's very concerning. At the very least, you're going to be inconvenienced. Your electricity might go off, your internet might go off. My phone's still not working. I can text, but I can't make phone calls. Just discovered that today. And wouldn't you know it, right before the show, Victoria contacts me via Skype and tells me that her boyfriend just got into a car accident with her brand new car. Just bought this car, not even 2 months. It's definitely not 3 months. It's about 2 months. And me, like a jerk, I advised her to take a high deductible. Because I always have my whole life. I never get into accidents. I assumed that the Opperman genes would continue another generation of excellent driving, but no such luck. No injuries, but minor damage to the cars. But even minor damage these days is $1,000, $1,500. So keep my little monkey there in your prayers. And her boyfriend, he just got his license like not even 6 months. And even though your kids grow up, she's always an adult. She'll be 24 in November. They still, they need this life experience advice, to call their dad and get help. Anyway, let's move on. So back to the hurricane stuff, it's so stressful. And then people make it worse by contacting you. Oh, Ed, insisting that I evacuate. I know what I'm doing, but people insist I evacuate. I don't want to dwell on this too much tonight because I did 2 shows, updates about this, complaining about people demanding I evacuate. But then it's even worse than that because people contact my daughter, Victoria, and tell her to demand I evacuate. You have a father there? Tell him to evacuate. And my poor kid's feeling all guilty. Then I even had an ex-girlfriend's mother contact me demanding that I evacuate. And I, please evacuate. I said, look, if you care about me so much, why don't you pay me some of that money your daughter owes me? Okay, if you're so concerned about me. I didn't really say that, but what are you going to do? Anyway, we're going to tell some more stories from 11 years of misery and self-destruction and I don't even know what else to call it. Let's find my notes here. Get this over with. So anyway, all my juice is back on. I still have to boil my water. I forgot to boil the water this morning when I first woke up. I had a little stomach problem. I had to make some Alka-Seltzer, and I forgot to put the boiled water, and I drank the water out of the faucet. And I was up early, like 5 o'clock. And I said, you know what? Let me drive around. Not too many cars out. Let me explore and see how bad the damages are. A lot of street lights are still out. The stoplights are out. And I got sick from drinking that stupid water. I almost didn't make it home. I was going to pull over and throw up on the side of the road, but I did make it home. But otherwise, I had mentioned too, both on Facebook and my little broadcast that I did there, that there was water on my kitchen floor that I couldn't figure out how it got there. I figured it out. Okay, what happened was I had frozen these water bottles, and then I had put them in the fridge. So when they froze, the plastic water bottles broke, and as they melted, it caused water to land on my kitchen floor. So we figured that mystery. It's an enigma wrapped up in a mystery. So 11 years I've been doing the Opperman Report. This October it was 11 years, or September I think it was. And the last 3 weeks I've been telling stories from the show. And so we're going to continue that because I had so many notes left over, and I threw up some more notes together, and way more that I didn't get to tonight. But what are you going to do? Okay. Coming up after this, I got 2 great shows for you. One is Matthew Ricker talking about the... pretty much he comes on to trash Tom Grant about the investigation of Kurt Cobain. It's up in the members section now, ad-free. I'm going to play it tonight. But in the members section, I'm going to add some stuff. He gave me some audio of a new witness that they interviewed who claims Tom Grant was there the night of the murder. You know? And I'm going to put that in there. And there's also a PDF file questioning Tom Grant's whole life. It really examines a lot of issues about the fellow there. You know, anyway, so that's available to you. Then before that, though, will be Greg Palast. He's got this great new documentary out, Vigilante Inc., and you can watch it for free at SaveYourVote.org. And you could also go to SaveYourVote.org, which is being paid for by Leonardo DiCaprio, to check and see if your voter registration is accurate and correct. Because what the Republicans are doing is they're doing this massive, they're challenging people's ability to vote. So it's very possible someone has made a challenge of your credentials to vote, and they send you a notice, but they could do it the day before the election. And then when you go to show up to vote, they'll tell you, no, you can't vote. Oh, but here's a provisional ballot. You can use this. That provisional ballot is garbage, man. No one's ever going to count that ballot. Okay, that's garbage. Don't accept that. There's a phone number of some lawyers you can call up at SaveYourVote.org. So watch the film. It's really funny. The interview with Greg Palast was fun too. It was, and I did those interviews, by the way, Thursday morning. Oh no, it was Wednesday morning, waiting for the hurricane to come. It's just like, it's going to hit any minute. My power is going to go off. So I was a little stressed for that too. And I did another interview too with this fellow about the Flint water crisis too. It's very, very good too. You'll probably be hearing that next week, and it'll be up at Patreon very shortly. Guys, I can't tell you how serious this is. We need at least 100 $5 Patreons to continue this, or $10, $50 Patreons. To continue to get another year out of me to doing this, okay? That's how tight things are getting. So I'll get into some stories here. I had on the show one time this fellow, George Christie. I'll tell you this story. He was formed with the Hells Angels, okay? And so he comes on the show and he's telling how he's all reformed. He doesn't do any kind of crime or anything anymore, right? And well, even though he's just had recent arrests, but whatever. Okay. So it turns out I'm over at my ex-girlfriend's house in Vegas, and her daughter's there. And her daughter had a baby with this fellow who had his own issues, So he tells me, he really looked up to me, this character, this kid. And he goes, you know what? He goes, Ed, I know George Christie. And I said, oh, really? How do you know? He goes, well, me and my friends, we were in California, and it was like Ventura, California, and we stumbled upon this field of marijuana. We found it with this grow operation, and we saw it, and we says, oh, wow, this is our opportunity. So they took like 200 pounds of this fresh marijuana, which really sucks to me, because if you pick this stuff before it's ready, it's not going to dry out quality. The quality is going to be crap, whatever. But so they pretty much, destroyed this pot. And he goes, so we went and we took this pot, and then wouldn't you know it, a couple of days later, like 25 Hells Angels pull up. George Christie's leading the group, and he tells us, man, you just ripped off the wrong guys. So they had to pay him back. And give them the stolen merchandise, and plus pay the damages, plus a little tax on top. So it's a small world, you know what I mean? I have a guest on the show, and my practical son-in-law there is ripping them off. And the kid there went on to some other adventures in his life. When I had first met him, he had this case where he was involved with this scam. He was Iranian, okay? And his father was Iranian. And if you look this up, this is it's a thing that's out there, okay? And they have a machine where they could take a $1 bill and reprint it to look like a $100 bill, okay? But the problem is it costs more than $100 to print $100 bill. But they can make a bill, okay, in this machine that they have. And they manufacture this machine in Iran, because Iran does it to mess with our currency here, right? And the kid had access to this thing through his father. So they did a scam with this guy who had an infomercial selling vitamins on late night TV, and they showed him how they could do it. He comes to the hotel with a big duffel bag full of money, and then they have their own guys come in and rush in, Secret Service, you're under arrest, blah, 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 and they steal the guy's money. Well, this guy wasn't going for it. He went to the cops, and the cops arrested this kid and his friend, who was a shady guy as well, and they testified against his own father, okay? His father went to prison. These two guys, young guys, made a deal against their own father, which I have no respect for that. You know, I didn't have any respect for this kid anyway. And then they became informants for the U.S. Secret Service. Now everyone's talking about this Butler assassination attempt, and how could the Secret Service fail you there? Secret Service is a disaster. Okay, so these two guys, they become informants for the U.S. Secret Service, right? And then when I had another issue, because one of these guys could ping cell phones. He had an access through the U.S. Secret Service that could ping cell phones. And he was going to sell that service to me when Neil Schoen and Mikhail Salahi, when she went missing and her husband thought that she was abducted, but she ran off with the guy from Journey, the lead singer of Journey. They came to me to locate her and hire her, and I was going to ping her cell phone. But then the FBI got involved, and they called me up, threatening me, telling me I wasn't allowed to do the investigation. This is what goes on in my life, guys. Okay, and it gets better. This story gets better. Because what happens then all that blows over, right? And I kind of distance myself from the kid and his buddy there, you know. They're up to shenanigans and scams. I think they were even involved in a little scam there, too, that something that's a little too close to home. Anyway. So I think this kid faked his own death. Because now here we are years later, and supposedly some weird story about how he's on some remote desert highway in Arizona, and he gets into a head-on collision with this other car, and the body is burned beyond recognition, but they used some kind of identifying, they had a driver's license in his pocket, this kind of stuff, so I think the kid faked his own death, and his whole family are con artists and scam artists and stuff like that, so it's very, very possible. So how's that for a little behind-the-scenes Opperman report? Okay, how's that one? I'll give you another one. I'm trying to get some. I contact Tom Arnold. Tom Arnold, the ex-husband of Roseanne Barr, and I'm contacting him about some information that he has when he was working on getting the P tape. Remember that? He was working behind the scenes. He had access to a lot of information. Tom Arnold at the time. He became friends with Michael Cohen, So anyway, so I contact him, and he goes, Ed, you're not going to believe this. I'm sitting here right now with the producer of this BBC documentary. She's staying with me at my house looking into information about Trump, and we're both sitting here listening to your show about with as all the president's women. And he goes, well, that's like a conspiracy, right? That we just happen to be listening to the show as you call us up, right? What's going on? He's being like a wise guy to me. So we go back and forth. I'm trying to get him to come on the show and stuff like that. There's another personal issue that another client I have has a beef with him. And so he couldn't see the bigger picture to overlook that and come on the show. But it's very interesting because now all the president's women, right, there was a book that came out called All the President's Women about Trump and all of his sexcapades right over the years and scandals. And in that book is a fellow named John Tino. It's a fake name. It's a nom de plume, right? It was John Tino, an alias. And John Tino was an organized crime figure in New York City back in the 70s and the 80s. And he ran massage parlors and porno theaters in Times Square. And one of the people who would come in and utilize him for prostitution was Mr. Trump. And there was one occasion where Trump was had sex with a porn star and an underage little girl. Okay, and John Tino arranged this. So it's in the book, All the President's Women. It tells a story about John Tino, tells a story about this underage kid. I interviewed the two authors who wrote this book. When I interviewed the first author, she tells me, "Oh, I don't know that much about the Tino story. You got to talk to the other author." And then when I have him on the show, he doesn't want to talk about Tino either. So I did a whole show about this. John Tino disappeared to NDA Island. See, because what happens is, even, the stories get caught and killed. We know that. Catch and kill. Ronan Farrow explains to everybody how it works, okay? And he mentions a couple of my cases in that book. But even after a book is published, they can reach these authors and get them not to talk about it during interviews, okay? And that's what I believe happened in this case. And I believe that this whole John Tino story, by the way, you can Google this all day long. It's very hard to find, okay? And the first time I heard it, the first time I heard about the John Tino story was before I interviewed these two authors. When it first came out about Epstein, when it became okay to talk about Epstein in polite circles, because Julie K. Brown, a switch was flipped someplace and she was allowed to do this big expose 4 years after I started talking about it. And then I always forget if it was after the death or after the arrest, when suddenly my phone starts ringing off the hook. Everybody wants to talk to Ed Opperman about the Jeffrey Epstein. And these reporters were calling me up. I forget where it was from. It was one of these tabloid joints. And he says, well, what do you know about the John Tino story? You don't find that credible, do you? And I said, what John Tino story? I never heard about this. So people were calling me up trying to discredit the John Tino story before I even heard of it. And then I have the two guys who wrote the book about it, and they don't want to talk about it. So that's one of these cases where I'm giving you behind-the-scenes information about how stories are covered up. I'll give you another one, okay? Be going back and forth. Ricky Casso. Remember Ricky Casso, the Acid King, when he killed that guy and he says, say hail Satan, say you love Satan, something like that, right? And there's a lot of information. It was in the Ricky Casso story, there was a lot of information about him being influenced by this older guy that many people believe was a member of the Protestant Church. Okay, so I bring on the host, the author of this book about Ricky Casso, and he had written a different book, to a second book about another type of satanic ritual abuse kind of case. And so I always tried to get him to come back on the show. We did the show about Ricky Casso. Everything's cool. And I can't come back. I can't come back because we're working on this big project. And, okay. Well, the project is done. Every couple of years, they contact me. You want to come back? Then I see Netflix does a big documentary reopening and re-exploring and re-examining the Ricky Casso case. And according to them, there was no Satanism involved at all. And who do I see on there? My former guest, agreeing with them, who wrote a book. Okay. Saying the exact opposite. But Netflix gets to these guys, they write them a check, and they're on there, yeah, I'll say whatever you want, Mr. Netflix. Okay. That's how this stuff works, guys. Okay. I think I told you, too, last week about how, there was a period of time. every one of my guests was being contacted by these minor TV production companies and getting them to sign NDAs, and they can't talk about their stuff anymore. And whatever you do, you can't tell Ed Opperman you signed an NDA and you have a deal with us. Okay? They're listening to my show to find these people, reaching out to them. They're talking about me in their negotiations. But part of their deal is they're no longer allowed to talk to me anymore. How about the Netflix? Remember the Netflix smear of Maury Terry? Okay. A lot of people may not realize how much I was involved in that, in the preparation of that documentary series. That fellow, Mr. Zeman, is a producer of that. He did the Cropsey film, too, as well. Where he, in the Cropsey film, he makes an allegation of the Grimson being involved in the Cropsey murders on Staten Island, because the Grimson lived on Staten Island. Then he somehow comes into possession. The chain of custody on this is all up the wazoo. Shady as F, as the kids say. Shady AF, as the youngsters out there like to say. But this guy contacts me through a mutual friend who had a daughter that was working for him. So I kept all that private over the years. And this guy's emailing me, Ed, send me this show, send me that show, put me in touch with this guest, put me in touch with that guy, all this kind of stuff. Oh, and Ed, I want to interview you for this documentary about your experience with Maury Terry. Now, everybody who knows me and Maury Terry knows we didn't get along. I found him to be racist, okay, bigot, and very difficult to get along with, as well as I am. Okay, I guess some people seem to feel that I'm difficult to get along with, but I'm really not. And I really ask for nothing from anybody in these kind of circles with this kind of stuff. Former guests, it's always the other way around. Former guests coming on here trying to hire me and get me to do work for them for free and stuff. That's what the problems are. But there's also this other thing that they see me. I got this New York personality, and I kind of come off sounding kind of aggressive. The scrappy PI, the kind of scrappy guy, right? So they think that they have to, and they don't want to be like intimidated by me. So they think they're going to be rude to me, and they're going to earn my respect by being rude to me, or trying to be overly aggressive or angry with me. That's not going to work, man. I'll cut you off. You're gone. I don't need you in my life. So with this guy here, Zeman, I did a lot of work for this guy for free, man. I put him in touch with guests, phone numbers, names, addresses, all kind of stuff, man. And then what happens? He says, hey, we want to interview you. I said, okay, I'll do the interview. He sends me this NDA. It was the most ridiculous thing I ever saw in my life. Where basically he says he's going to own anything I say to him. I said, are you out of your mind? Why would I sign that? You paid me a dime. I've done nothing but help you, and now you're telling me you want to own me for nothing, for free? I said, I'm not signing that. In fact, I didn't even get back to him and say I was going to sign it. He comes back to me, hey, Ed, we want to have this talk tomorrow afternoon. You still haven't sent the agreement back. I said, I'm not sending it out of your back, out of your mind. Get out of here. So then, when you know, it turns out the whole thing's a smear. But that's a little behind-the-scenes stuff on there, too. Same way, too, man, Bill Hamilton, the octopus stuff, man, how they tried to smear him, too, on Netflix, too. I think that kind of failed, but... you might see some stuff out there about P. Diddy right now. There's this woman named Allie Carter, okay? And she first came to prominence in the alternative media community because she started saying that she had been to these underground bases underneath the Getty Museum, where there's hundreds of thousands of children being held slave and captive under the Getty Museum, and then there's a tunnel network all over the world up from the Getty Museum. Now that comes from the guy who made that up is a guy named Stephen D. Kelly. Now I know this guy personally. I've met him in person. I've got pictures, photographs, posing for a picture with this character. And he claims to be former NSA and CIA. I looked into this guy's credentials. I looked into his credibility. He's totally full of crap. He was involved in this big hoax with Dr. Bill Weld and Kerry Cassidy and this nonsense. And I contacted the guy who was behind the hoax. He confessed the whole thing. I went to him and Kerry Cassidy and I told him, hey, you know, that thing's a hoax. Here's an email from the guy saying it's a hoax, admitting it. And they just went and kept peddling that hoax. So he's the guy who made up this fantasy story about the Getty Museum. Allie Carter heard him, and she started repeating that. And now she's running around telling people she's been in tunnels under P. Diddy's house. Total fraud, total nutcase, total waste of time. Okay? And this is from a guy that knows the people that made up the story. Okay, real quick about the ice cubes, man. One of the people in the chat room saying boil the ice cubes. It's so funny because you know when you got to boil your water, right? The water coming from the untreated water coming from you is you're making ice from that. You can't use that ice. So I'm telling my neighbor, I says, oh yeah, I gotta throw out my ice. I gotta stop using the new ice too. I gotta turn off my ice maker. And she's saying, what are you talking about? That ice doesn't come from the faucet. That water doesn't come from the faucet. It comes from the refrigerator. And I says, what are you talking about? It says there's a line from your faucet to your refrigerator to get that water to make the ice. She goes, no, there isn't. I pull my refrigerator off the wall all the time. I clean behind it. There's no plumbing back there. I said, well, then where do you think the water comes from? She goes, it's in the refrigerator. So she thinks it's like a lifetime worth of water to make ice in her refrigerator. When you buy the refrigerator, it comes included with water. Oh, my God. I saw her one time, too, out there, like, in the rain, shoveling or something. I don't know. She's not all there. Oh, my God. Why do you distract me, guys? Oh, God. Tom Arnold. And there was some other stuff by Tom Arnold I wanted to tell you. Mel's Hole, Art Bell feud. Let's hold off on that. Brother Frank Minucci. Kind of funny. I used to beef with this guy when I first got saved in Staten Island. And my church there, and I would go around and give my testimony. Hey, look at me. Here's this former criminal, this organized crime guy who was a smuggler. And now I'm reformed. I'm an evangelist for the church, a born-again guy. Doing good. So there was this other fellow named Brother Frank Minucci. Who was an organized crime fellow there, and now he went straight. Turns out this guy actually wasn't all that straight because Robert Blake hired him to threaten his wife, okay, before she died in that mysterious shooting. So when they would have like men's breakfast and stuff like that, they would sit me next to Brother Frank because they figured, well, here's these two reformed gangsters, they should get along great. Right? Let's sit them together at the same table, right? They could break bread together. But the thing is, Minucci hated me, man, because I would go around and speak at these churches. I didn't accept any money, but he wanted to get paid for it. So he hated me, man. So we'd be sitting there and sitting next to each other, but not a word passing between us. Okay. But wouldn't you know it, I had a guest on the show, and he was in Prince of the City, that guy with that big giant mustache, the Prince of the City. He was in a lot of famous movies. Great actor, man. Character actor, you know. He was in Serpico, too. He played the gambling guy who killed the cop that Serpico beats up in the holding cell in the beginning of the movie. And all these iconic movies, man. Great guy, too. We got along great, off the air and on the air. And wouldn't you know it, though, man, I said, what about that guy, Frank Minucci? Did you know him? And he goes, I don't know anything about it. And later on, I found out that they were best friends, too. I guess I was complaining about Frank Minucci, and he just happened to know Frank Minucci. Another funny one is Gianni Russo. Another one of these from the mafia, from the mob to Hollywood guys, right? Because the other guy, too, I forget his name, because he uses a couple of different names, this guy, the other one there with the mustache. But Gianni Russo was the guy who played Carlo in The Godfather, okay? And I had him on the show. A lot of the stuff he says, he exaggerates, but I still like him. We got along great. We got along great on the air and off the air. But the funny part with him is when we were at a commercial break, because he's old, man. He's like 20 years older than me. And I hear him. He's on the phone, during his commercial break, negotiating an olive oil deal. he's gonna like get a license for this olive oil deal, and I'm gonna put his name on it. And he's gonna sell it. It's great. I got a whole distribution all set up already. He's doing this olive oil deal on the phone, and it just kind of reminded me back when I was smoking the pot. What happened was one of my guys had gotten busted, right? And he sent over a mutual friend. I didn't get a call or anything to tell me what happened, but he sent over a mutual friend to say, hey, man, our friend, Richie's in trouble, and he needs money for bail. So that's why I'm coming here to pick up the money and bail him out. He says, you're going to take care of him, right? I said, oh, yeah, I'll take care of him. So it was so funny. So he comes up, and back then, too, I was on the third floor of this condo complex, right? The top floor had the big, giant vaulted ceilings, had a pool table on the second level. So and when someone would ring my doorbell, I'd get my gun, and I'd go to the terrace, and I'd go over to the terrace. Hey, who's down there? And I see this guy. I recognize him, but what's he showing up at my house at 8 o'clock in the morning? It's kind of weird, So he tells me, I got to come up and talk to you. Oh, come on, I'll keep the gun on me there, just in case. So he comes up, and he tells me the deal, and I says, okay, let me get you some money, take care of Richie. And then, wouldn't you know it, I get another phone call, and it was about these guys. They had this deal about they were trying to buy a lobster boat, and they needed $10,000 from me to buy this lobster boat, right? And so I'm talking to him. I'm negotiating this lobster boat deal, while I'm paying the bail money and this other guy, and he never let me forget this. He would go around and tell people the story. He goes, I'm at Ed's house. He's sitting in his bathrobe at his desk. He's on the phone, and he's talking to these guys. What do you need? 10,000 free lobsters? Sounds great. Because part of the deal was I got free lobsters for life. And then this guy later on, he came to me too, man. He owned a little flower shop, and he said, I need you to loan me some money. But you get free flowers for life. That was part of that deal too. Oh, God. That's Gianni Russo. John Tino. Oh, God, I'm out of breath, man. Oh, Charles Upman. Charles Upham, whose daughter was Misty Upham. And Misty Upham, when she was alive and she was a young actress in Hollywood, got raped at the Golden Globe Awards ceremonies by Harvey Weinstein. And there was a long line for girls to get into the ladies' room. And he was walking by her on the line and just grabbed her by the arm and pulled her into the men's room, took her into a stall, and raped her in front of 100 witnesses. Witnesses on the women's line and witnesses in the men's bathroom. And then after he raped her, he was high-fiving people on the way out of the bathroom. And people were high-fiving him. So at the time, we couldn't say it was Harvey Weinstein. We did mention it was someone from the Weinstein organization, but it was Harvey Weinstein. That's a really brutal interview, because this poor young lady never had a chance in life. She was raped as a young child on the Indian reservation there, and the native tribal cops just says, oh, boys will be boys. That's just how these kids are around here. Just gotta get over it, right? And then she had all kind of issues with mental issues like bipolar kind of stuff and confusion. And she had moved to be near her parents. I think it was like Seattle or something like that. And she was in between the Medicare, Medicaid, and she was off her medication. And she, having an episode, the family called the police, and she took off running and wound up falling off of a cliff to her death. This is after the rape of Weinstein. And the cops didn't even bother looking for her. The civilians found her there like weeks later. When the cops told her, yeah, she ran right down that trail, right there. They didn't even look for her. Made no effort to search for that young lady. I interviewed several times Mike Parziale about the Michael Jackson case and the Wade Robeson case. And he would come on and tell me about these different cases. He told me about Nathan Forrest Winters, who was the young boy who was molested in a film by Victor Silva. Okay. And, no one had interviewed this kid, by the way, before me. He does a lot of stuff now. And he came out with his own little film there called The Babysitter. But I interviewed him, and he tells a story about how, because Francis Ford Coppola had produced the film for Victor Silva, that this young boy was molested in. And everyone on the set said, hey, man, the relationship between this little boy and this director is weird. And that's how he got busted. Okay, because people saw this thing and said, hey, this is not right. But wouldn't you know it, they kept in the scenes in the movie of Nathan Forrest Winters, scenes that were clearly used for Mr. Silva's sexual gratifications. Is one issue. But then Francis Ford Coppola stayed behind Silva, produced him in another film, and also asked that he be released to attend the premiere of this film. Get out on a furlough to attend the film premiere. So that's Mr. Francis Ford Coppola for you. He's got a big film out there now, which reminded me of all this. I was talking about it recently. But that's a whole other thing going on there, man. As you know, I've covered the Stormy Daniels situation, closer to that, I don't think anybody in history. Okay, about that story, man. Because I know everybody involved. I know Gene Rodriguez, Keith Davidson, Keith Schiller, I knew him, Dylan Howard, I knew him. All these people that are mentioned in that negotiation, that deal there. My name, they talk about the PI. The PI is in the Michael Cohen text messages. And, of course, my client and my sponsor, Keith Davidson, has testified at the trial. He got Trump his 34 convictions. Kind of an interesting, funny story there, too. Is the first time I had ever called Dylan Howard when I didn't know him, before I had known him, And he answers the phone. And I go, hey, Mr. Howard, my name is Ed Opperman. He goes, Ed Opperman, I'm a huge fan. I says, yeah, bullshit. I says, you never listen to my show. And he starts rattling off all the sponsors and stuff like that about, Aquadev, and Keith Davidson and stuff. Oh, no, I've known Keith Davidson for years. Stuff like that. That was mind-blowing, too, that he had listened to the show. But, so Stormy Daniels, I think I've covered better than anybody else. No one can touch me on that. Christopher Dorner. Now, remember him? He's that cop that went nuts and shot up the whole LAPD up there, and the cops shot up these two women in a pickup truck and 72 bullets in their car, and then they want to burn in this guy alive. My connection to that is that people don't talk about the Christopher Dorner story. Is he owned a place in Las Vegas at Rhodes Ranch. In fact, and he bought his silencers for his gun at one of the gun stores I used to go to in my neighborhood there in Green Valley Parkway, Green Valley Ranch. Now, the cops went to his Road Ranch house. Right? I guess you have to check it to see if he's in there. But there comes a point, they know he's not in there. But they shot up that house. Okay? They shot that house up with some kind of projectiles, I guess tear gas canisters or something. They were the size of Coke cans. And you could see these holes in the walls and the windows, the size of Coke cans. Right? Now, you can't find those pictures on the internet anymore. They've been totally scrubbed off the internet. And then what they did was, they knew he wasn't in there. They shut down that neighborhood. They shut that neighborhood. They wouldn't let people come out of their house. And then 3 o'clock comes rolling around, and the school bus shows up to drop the kids off to their neighborhood. They wouldn't let the parents go to their houses and leave their houses, go to the school bus and pick up their kids. The cops, in full SWAT gear, took these kids off the bus one by one and walked them over to their parents' house. Huge scandals and weird stuff went on in that case. We did a great show about Christopher Dorner. Did a couple of great shows about the D.C. sniper, okay? One where we had this fellow come on, Emilio, I forget his name, and he'd been talking to the D.C. sniper. He confessed to 30 other murders. That was exclusive to our show. That had not come out anywhere before us. And then I had this other woman come on and talk about his connections to FBI and stuff like that, too, as well. Oh, Melvin Dumar. Remember the story about Melvin Dumar and Howard Hughes, and how Howard Hughes had Melvin Dumar picked him up on the road there, and then Howard Hughes put him in his will. They made that great movie about it, you know. So I tracked down Melvin Dumar. This guy wasn't doing media appearances or anything like that. I track him down, man. He comes on the show. What a nice guy, man. He was in real estate up in Utah at that point in his life. And you know what? Or what? It was a small world. Because his claim was he picked up Howard Hughes on this road outside of a brothel up near Reno. I think it was Reno, right? It's one of those remote brothels that they have up there. And it turned out later on, we confirmed that Howard Hughes did go to that brothel, you know, and that was unconfirmed by anybody. I think we confirmed that through Sarah Jane Woodall, Wonder Hussy, okay? Which, by the way, people always, well, at the time when I first interviewed Wonder Hussy, no one, they were calling her like a prostitute and a pornography and stuff like that. You know, they're saying these horrible things about it. They had people just couldn't appreciate the performance that this woman was doing. And she was a columnist, you know, and she's been in movies and stuff. And now she does these YouTube videos exploring abandoned Wonder Hussy adventures and stuff like that. Totally rebranded herself. But you know, I got you know, when I had her on the show, she didn't have any following at all, man. I got her 6,000 followers on YouTube just from that the first appearance. Commie Nudie. How's this, man? So, you know, on WBAI in 1970s, there was this caller who would call in to the station, and usually Bob Fast, because Bob Fast, you know, they used to say he was a communist. And one time he was telling a story about how he went to a nudist colony, to a nudist camp retreat. And this caller got upset about this, and he would call up and say, yelling, "Commie Nudie," into the phone. And he would make these prank phone calls. And then we found out, okay, that he worked at a fire department. And in front of the fire department, there was a bank of payphones, like 12 of them in a row. And he would call them up in sequence into the WBAI so that he would beat the 9 callers in a row. Like they would hang up on him. He'd pick up the next one and yell, "Commie Nudie." They'd pick up the next one, "Commie Nudie." So he was such a character that you remember the guy, Fan Man, John 312. He had the rainbow wig. He would go to the football games and stuff like that, and big high-profile sporting events, and hold up the sign John 312, which is the "Every man shall be born again" Bible verse. But he would do it with this rainbow fright wig. And then it turns out that John Fan Man, as they called him, had his own issues too, and he wound up taking hostages in this hotel room. He took the housekeeper in this hotel room hostage. There was an armed standoff. He wound up going to prison. But before that, Commie Nudie, my guest here on the show, tracked down Fan Man. He saw him on TV and says, "Oh my God, this is so interesting." Just kind of like me, you know. I think Commie Nudie is interesting, so I track him down, bring him on the show. Turned out he was a 9/11 hero. He was one of those heroes at 9/11, fireman. And he got the 9/11 sickness too. You know, he was dying of cancer at the time I had him on the show, but still a fun guy. And he was in the Radio Hall of Fame for calling and screaming "Commie Nudie." How's that? Oh, who was that guy? Alan A. Bell. I'll tell you that story. Yeah, oh, that's a good story. Let me fit that in. I might have to do one more week of this. If everybody's enjoying this, okay? Because I think people have been enjoying it. So he tracks down Fan Man, and they hang out together. They start hanging out. They become best friends. And then Fan Man goes and gets arrested. Alan A. Bell. Oh, Alan A. Bell. If you lived in New York, Alan A. Bell was this notorious hoaxer who would pull on these stunts against the media. He had a school for beggars, all these different things. I can't remember what they are now all off the top of my head. And he would fool the media into doing pieces about him, news pieces about him, when the whole thing was a hoax and a stunt. And so I interviewed him, you know, because there was a film about him too that had come out years before, and I got a copy of it. And I got a hold of Alan A. Bell, and I interviewed him. And then he died shortly after, and his daughter contacted me for a cassette, not a cassette, a DVD of the interview, and it was placed in the Smithsonian Institute, or it was either the Library of Congress or the Smithsonian Institute, because they had a section about Alan A. Bell, this notorious hoaxer, and the Opperman Report radio show is in there with him too, as part of his exhibit. How's that? What a life. May Pang, The Lost Weekend, I had her on the show. She was the girlfriend of John Lennon. Yoko Ono had hooked her up, and so she comes on the show. The first interview was a 2-hour interview. I think it was 2 hours. It might have been just 1 hour. But at one point, I asked her, hey, what about these people who say Paul is dead? And she goes, oh, he's not dead. She goes, I met both of them. And I said, what? So, I always say that Paul wasn't dead. He was just swapped out with another guy, So there was two Pauls. And so she actually says in the interview, I met both of them. So that kind of slipped out. And that is a funny story, too. Just more recently, she had an art exhibit down here in Florida, and I drove down there like 2 hours to go. I interviewed her right before that because she came up with this great film called The Lost Weekend, The Love Story, which is really good. If you can watch that, you could find that like on Tubi or something like that. It's an excellent documentary. And they really take the gloves off about Yoko Ono. Because let me tell you something. Everybody around Yoko Ono is afraid of Yoko Ono. I've had a lot of people on the show that A.J. Webman knows Yoko Ono. I've had a lot of people on the show try and talk about Yoko Ono. They don't want to talk about him. Okay, because people are afraid of her. I had that fellow, too, their butler, who went to prison because he supposedly stole some stuff out of there. Then he gets out of prison, then she gets him thrown back in prison. So she's tough. Anyway, so May Pang, I went down there to see May Pang. She had this art exhibit of photographs she took of John Lennon on The Lost Weekend, and it was down there in Naples, Florida. So I drive all the way down there. I took the scenic route. I didn't want to take the highway. I took the local roads, the beach towns. And, brought back a lot of memories, a little place that I explored with Victoria. Now she's off on her own. And so I get down there to this little art gallery, and there's a line out the door, So I'm waiting online, right? And then I hear some people talking to me, right? And they're saying, hey, there's another entrance in the back, and there's no line. And I heard them, and I said, well, my ears perked up, right? So just as we're about to get off the line and go in the back, this other guy shows up. And I'm wearing a sport jacket, and, I got a beard, You got to see my beard lately. I stopped dyeing my beard since I got a gray beard now. And so I'm online, and I got a sport jacket and a beard. And right at the same time, this guy shows up. And he's got a sport jacket on and a beard, but he had a ponytail, too. And he starts... he's really agitated, and he's talking about how Yoko Ono owes him $400 million. And he's cut his way in front of the line to get in this door. And, Yoko Ono owes me this money. So this guy's causing a big scene at the door. So when me and this other couple go around to the back door and we get in, and we get inside, everyone's talking about this guy with the beard and the sport jacket. It's just causing a scene, and here, I guess they kicked him out of the front door, and then now here I come. They look like the same guy. People think I'm the guy. Oh, God. What a life. Anyway, I didn't even get a chance to meet May Pang. It was too crowded. I did that great show. Whoa. This is one of my favorite shows, and if you listen to it, man, this is really dramatic radio. It was on the day of the caucus in Nevada. And what happened was they had pulled some shenanigans the night before, and they fired the head of the credentials committee, who was a Bernie delegate. And they did that so they could sneak people in without credentials, and no one was qualified to check people's credentials. And later on we found out, yeah, that's true, because even when I went down to the caucus, to my caucus there, these are supposed to be my neighbors, people that I would know. I didn't recognize anybody in that room. Then you go out into the parking lot, we see all these plates from California. Why are there hundreds of California license plates here at the Nevada caucus? Okay, makes no sense. The whole thing was so shady, man. And even the way they give you, they had these tickets that were printed out that was how you did your vote. And you had to rip off the top part. But the thing is, everybody was carrying these tickets around. There was no numbers on them. There was no way to verify these things. So the next day, I get a call, and I forget what it was. Maybe I needed a ride or something to get there. And that's how I met Christine Kramer, because I called up some friends of mine that were Bernie people, and we're talking on the phone. And I said, yeah, you can give me a ride. Okay, great. I need a ride down there. And we're on this conference call, and they start talking about, well, we might get arrested today because we're confronting them, they might be arrested. And I says, well, wait a minute. I says, if something's going on like that, I'll broadcast on the radio. And he says, what are you talking about? I say, I got a radio show. I'm on like 10, 15 internet radio stations all over the world, in Ireland, all over. Okay. And I says, and I can break in. I can go and just start broadcasting live on their stations. I have the authority to do that if it's a big, important story. So they did that. They had a sit-in. They were protesting the Credentials Committee being being fired the night before. And the cops were coming to arrest them. And I broke in live. I said, we're live on the air. They're passing the phone around. And that's because they were live on the radio. That's what prevented them from getting arrested that day. That's really radio gold. Let's see here. Let me see if I have time for this one. I do. Only a couple minutes. This is probably going to be the last one. I might have to do another one for you next week because there's just so much here. But the whole thing with Bundy Ranch, remember when they went up to the Burns in support of the Hammond family, and they took that the Mayher National Wildlife Refuge 30 miles south of Burns, and they went there and had the other standoff where that guy, Lavoy Finnegan, died in a shootout with the cops. So before all that happened, I go to a party at my pastor's house. It wasn't a party. It was like a get-together kind of thing. And one of the assistant pastors there who ran this ministry where they would build wells down in Mexico, he goes, I have a story for your radio show. It's a great story. There's this family up there in Oregon, I think it was, wherever it was. And they did this thing with their property where they did this burn line. Their property's about to get burned down, so they did this burn line. And, there's other issues up there with poaching and stuff like that. This Hammond family, they got problems. But I know their daughter, she's part of my ministry. She goes down to Mexico and she digs these wells. I can get them to come on the radio with you. This is before anybody knew about the Hammond family and the story with the Burns and the Bundy Ranch standoff up there and all these guys. He goes, I can get you an interview with them. And I said, okay, great. So he's putting it, because I had heard the story too. I had heard the story on the news. And the guy was just about to be sentenced like the next day or that week. Right? And he contacts me. He goes, Ed, I talked to Mr. Hammond. They don't want to do the interview because even though they are sentenced for like 3 years, they have a deal where right after he's sentenced, they're going to give him a suspended sentence. Okay, but you can't talk about this or nothing because they don't want this to go public. They want to look like he's being punished. And what you know, these morons from Bundy Ranch go up there and do this standoff, the guy winds up going to prison. The guy that they went up there supposedly to save and help and all that stuff, they wind up putting the guy in prison by doing this thing. So I interview the guy. Now the Bundy Ranch is a big story, so I interview my friend who has the ministry. He comes on the show. So this is way back when I was on that crazy station, Revolution Radio. That's how long ago this was. So he comes on my show and tells a story. So these other hosts on the station down there, they're all glued to my show. Oh, it was insane. Copying all my work. And they contact this guy and say, we want you to come on our show too. And he goes, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm not the spokesman for the Hammond family. I did Ed a favor because he's a friend of mine from church. We're friends. Okay, that's why I went on his show. So these other hosts go on their show that night. They don't have a guest. So they just make it up. They just make up the whole story. Just totally made up this crazy thing about how there were mineral rights up there. The federal government was coming in to take their land. It was just, they didn't know what they were talking about. Then when the standoff up there got big and got crazy, those nuts from that station told them they extended their standoff with the cops in that situation up there for days and days and days because the people from the radio station, these crackpots who just made up this whole story, were telling the Bundy Ranch people there's the police are going door to door up there arresting supporters in the town up there. Okay, arresting your local supporters. But don't worry, because there's divisions of patriots are on their way up there to support you. So these guys who are sitting there doing this armed standoff think that they have reinforcements coming with patriots, so they extended their standoff due to the irresponsibility of some of the crackpots at that station. All right, guys, we're out of time. I got so much more Reverend Pinckney I want to tell you about with his little tool that he would use to turn the water back on. Armed men at a Las Vegas Trump rally. There's so much stuff here. Some behind-the-scenes stuff about George Webb. That nut. God, there's a lot of stuff here. I should do maybe like a special 2-hour show. Or maybe go in there and edit this whole. Anyway, let's get going. Guys, I super duper need Patreons, okay, man? If you're a Patreon member now, why don't you up your membership from a 3 to a 5 or from a 5 to a 10, whatever they are. I don't even know what those things are. Or if you could come up with a suggestion of how I could make the Patreon more interesting to you. I do have my sizzle reel from the old documentary pitch that we had done. I want to put that up there on Patreon. I got the Courtney Love tapes. I can put that up there. There's something else too. I was thinking I could put up there right away. Some kind of document or something. Oh, all the documents that Bill Hamilton sent me, I have that. And then plus I'll put up the stuff there about with this guest today. The stuff about Matthew Ricker there, and all those information about Tom Grant with the old Courtney Love, Kurt Cobain stuff. But guys, out of time, out of breath, out of my mind. Okay. Can't go on anyway. Oh, okay. I'm gonna give you another couple of minutes after I play this outro song. Okay, so stay with me.
Wanna tell you about the girl I love. My, she looks so fine. She's the only one that I've been dreaming of. Maybe someday she will be all mine. I wanna tell her that I love her so. I'm through with her every touch. I need to tell her she's the only one I really love. I got a warm, warm boat all day. I got a woman, she won't be true now. I got a woman, stay drunk all the time. I said I got a little woman and she won't be true. On Sunday morning when we go down to church, see the men folks standing in line. Don't say they come to pray to the Lord. I'm with my little girl, looks so fine. And in the evening when the sun is sinking low, everybody's with the one they love. I walk the town, keep on searching all around, looking for my street corner girl. I got a warm, warm boat all day. I got a woman, she won't be true, no, no. I got a woman, stay drunk all the time. I said I got a little woman and she won't be true. And in the bars with the men who play guitar, see they're drinking and remembering the time.
stay drunk all the time. Okay, let me tell you the story about that song. Real quick, and we'll get going. I had two girlfriends in my life that were both born on June 20th. They're both Geminis, right? One of them was that girl in Vegas, the one I tell you about the story about the French Foreign Legion with all the toys out in front of the apartment there. And that was a huge, passionate love affair with this woman. And it was September. She was born June 20th, okay? She was about my age. But then years later, we were 26 years old when we were going out. Right? And then years later, I dated this other girl, right after my divorce. Or it was pretty much, I guess, maybe even during the divorce. Because Victoria's very, very little. And Victoria loved this girl, Holly. Okay, I'll tell you who it was. Okay. And she was 26 years old, too. And she was also born June 20. So two girls, both 26 and both June 20 Geminis, right? But Holly was such a freaking character. She was from this little town up in Hemet, California. And she came down to Las Vegas. Right? And and it was so weird, too, man, because I don't know how much I was kind of celibate at the time. Okay, well, I was trying to be celibate. And so me and her, like, we would be dating and sexually active when we weren't living together, but then we were broken up, and she came to live with me when we were broken up. Okay. And there was even one time, too, where we were so tempted when she was living with me that we were going to go to the little wedding chapel in Vegas and get married that night just so we could have sex that same night. But the thing with Holly was that she was drunk all the time. She used to love to drink wine. And I gave her first taste of Merlot. Okay, and because it's a sweet red wine, you know, and she had never had it before. But once she did, man, she loved that stuff. So she was just drunk all the time. Oh God, I was drinking pretty good back in those days too. Although I was fit, I was so strong, man. We used to go on these hikes out there in Lake Mead, you know. And Vic loved this girl, man. They got along so good. Vic was always looking for female attention in her life, you know, like a mother figure. So the story about how, you know, you bring this pretty girl to church, you know, and all the guys at church are staring at your girlfriend, you know, in that song, that was so true because she was such a beautiful girl, man. We would go to church every Sunday. On Sunday mornings, we would go to 2 services, and we go to Wednesday night service and stuff like that. And try to be good, you know. And but all the guys were lusting after my girlfriend, you know. She was gorgeous. And but the thing was, like, a couple of incidents we had. One was this thing where she had gotten really drunk, and she something she wanted to wrestle me. Go, let's wrestle right here, right now, right. That's how we do it in heaven, right here, right now. As Holly, man, the dog will go crazy. The dog will eat you alive if he sees you raise a hand to me. That dog loves me more than you. That dog loves me. He loves me more than you. Right here, right now. Right here, right now. Holly, calm down. We're not going to wrestle. We're supposed to keep your voice down. Upstairs, right now. Let's do it upstairs. And her thing was, that's how they do it in heaven. That's how they do it in heaven. Oh, God. So that was my Holly story. And that song is dedicated to Holly. Another love of my life. Beautiful woman. I love that chick so much. Let me think of other funny. I got some crazy Holly stories. All right, guys. Good night. Finally, we're done. We're done. Give you a little extra 2 minutes there. Right here, right now. Size don't matter. Size don't matter. All right, guys. I love you. Good night. I love you too, Holly. Do, 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 do. I got a woman stay drunk all the time.